Good morning. Today we take up another poem which is an exact example of modern poetry, Preludes by T.S. Eliot. Look at the title first. What is prelude? Prelude is usually a short musical piece which precedes the larger part of it. These preludes, there are 4 of them in this poem, were written early in Eliot's career. They can be interpreted as the voice of a new poet. These poems, rather these preludes, preceded his longer poems, which were among them Wasteland was one, and it contains 4 stanzas. 4 stanzas read as independent poems. Most of the description in these 4 stanzas is that of evening and morning. Evening and morning in the industrial city act as preparation for work. Morning, the hushed up preparation, and evening when one is too tired. There's this theatrical quality presented in these preludes. There is also a religious context. So, what are we looking for? First, something about the poet. You see, Thomas Stearns Eliot, as he was known, T.S. Eliot, born on 26 September 1888, and he died on 4th January 1965. He was an American-born British poet. This is the other way around. Most of the poets went to America from Britain, but he relocated to Britain. He was an essayist, a publisher, a playwright, a literary critic, and an editor. He was born in St. Louis, Missouri. He moved to England in 1914 at the age of 25, and he went on to settle, work, and marry in England. He became a confirmed British citizen in 1927 at the age of 39, and he subsequently renounced his American citizenship. Amongst his famous works are The Love Song of Prufrock, The Wasteland, The Four Quartets, Hollow Men, and the play Murder in the Cathedral. About the poem, as I told you, preludes refers to something preliminary, something which occurs at the beginning of a greater task. It is a poem composed between 1910 and 11. It is in turn literal and impressionistic. It explores the sordid and solitary existence of the spiritually moiled as they play out against the backdrop of the drab modern city. This modern city can be any city. I now begin the poem. It is in 4 parts. Each part reads like an independent poem in itself, and the imagery is sordid, dirty, cramped city life, boring, dull, smoky. This theme runs throughout the poem in different phases. The poem begins with the description of a winter evening. The winter evening settles down with smells of steaks in passageways, 6 o'clock. The burnt out ends of smoky days, and now a gusty shower wraps the grimy scraps of withered leaves about your feet and newspapers from vacant lots. The showers beat on broken blinds and chimney pots, and at the corner of the street, a lonely cab, horse teams and stamps, and then the lightening of the lamps. The description is that of winter evening as it settles down. It is a personification in which the feelings of the characters or the speakers are embodied by inanimate objects. You see, there's no person mentioned here. The winter evening experiences an orderly transition from day to night. It's dusk time, and you see, there is this repetition of the S sound, steaks, sick, smoky, scraps. Look at the alliteration, but the images are all sordid. The passageways, the time is 6 o'clock, and there is the smell of steaks in and around. The shops will be closed soon. So those who want to buy something, buy some food after a tiring day, they do so. The burnt out ends of smoky days. Days have been, are the days smoky? It's the people who've been smoking, and there are these grimy scraps, the ends, the butt ends. There are the withered leaves which crush on your feet, which fall and crush during the day. There's been a lot of dry leaves falling from the trees. See the reversal of nature poetry. Even the withering of the leaves is described beautifully in nature poetry, in romantic poetry. But here there is no glorification. It's the withered leaves corresponding with the mind of the people. Newspapers from vacant lots. There are newspapers thrown after they've been read. The showers beat on broken blinds and chimney pots, and people are entering their houses after the shower. They are opening their windows. At the corner of the street, you can find only a cab horse stamping, and this is also symbolic. It has no one. Then there's again this desolation, sense of desolation. The lonely people in their houses after their shower. There is sudden mechanical lightening of the lamps. The lightening of the lamps has been described as a very mechanical event. After a hard, tiring day, as people enter their houses, after their shower, they open the curtains, and of course, if they are cooking, there are those chimney pots. and the corner of the street there's again symbol of loneliness. There's just a lonely cab, and then, as if in many houses, in a very mechanical movement, there is the lightening of the lamps. Night is falling, and the lightening of the lamp here refers to the lightening of the gas street lamps. It begins the motive of light in the poem. That there is this light not to illuminate, not to enlighten, but as a mechanical piece of prop, rather. I now move to section 2 of the poem. Section 2 describes morning. Section 1 described evening, and section 2 describes morning, the following morning. Morning comes to consciousness of faint stale smells of beer from the sawdust trampled street, with all its muddy feet that press to early coffee stands. With the other masquerades that time resumes, one thinks of all the hands that are raising dingy shades in 1,000 furnished rooms. Morning here is personified. Morning is coming to consciousness, and with the faint smell of beer that has been consumed during the night. You had the smell of steaks in the first stanza, and you have the smell of beer in this one. From the sawdust trampled street with all its muddy feet that press to early coffee stands. You have sawdust streets, and it has been trampled by people, by lonely people. It's all muddy, but people are rushing to the coffee stands to have their first cup of coffee. The people are lonely, so they might not be preparing anything at home. So the first thing, or they are migrant workers, they live in dingy houses, so they rush to the coffee stands early in the morning. With the other masquerades that time resumes, then they put on more masks and think of all the hands that are raising dingy shades in 1,000 furnished rooms. And suddenly there is this act, just as there was this act of uh, lights coming on. Similarly, you have the shades being put open in 1,000 furnished rooms. It's all description of the middle class. And again you see the repetition of the S sounds comes consciousness, stale, smell, sawdust, street, stands. There is this muddy feet, the dingy shades, all representing the working class community, the working class city dwellers, for whom all these acts are monotonous. They begin the day on a very low note and end the day finally finding no food but only beer to have. The rooms, the word furnished rooms is also very suggestive. They can be very basic, they are cheap, and they symbolize the degraded life of the city. The poem seems nostalgic. It describes the individual human lifestyle. This is industrialization, impact of industrialization. The dingy shades, everything is dirty. The city dwellers don't have, if I ask you for the setting of the poem, you have a setting in section 1, you have a setting in section 2. This is very dramatic setting. There is this dystopian vision of a mechanical monotony in these houses. People with masquerades, that is, they are all putting up a face. They are not being real, they are not being natural, they are all playing roles. They are trying to pretend to be living happily, to be uh, living a good life, but that's not the reality. That is fake. The speaker, the one who thinks, seems depressed at his visions. Coming to Prelude 3. This stanza is an address directly to someone, to a second person, to a you who is the subject. In section 1 and section 2, it was evening and morning personified. But here it is directed to someone, probably a female figure, a woman belonging to one of the most down subjects. Okay, and it is indicated that she is probably a prostitute. You tossed a blanket from the bed, you lay upon your back and waited, you dozed and watched the night revealing 1,000 sordid images of which your soul was constituted. Here is this soul, the soul probably of a woman, of a prostitute. They flickered against the ceiling, and when all the world came back and the light crept up between the shutters, and you heard the sparrows in the gutters, you had such a vision of the night as the street hardly understands, sitting along the bed's edge, where you curled the papers from your hair or clasped the yellow soles of feet in the palms of both soiled hands.